Good afternoon, everybody. In this video, I'll talk about Newton's law of gravitation. What is it? Every object in this cosmos attracts every other object in the cosmos. That means you may be very far from me, but there is attraction between you and me. There is attraction between me and the houses around here. There is attraction between the earth and the moon, the earth and the sun. So that means all the masses in this universe attracts each other. That is what we call the Newton's law of gravitation. As an example, I have two masses here. This is mass 1 and this is mass 2. These two masses always attracts. There is no repulsion. Remember, there is no repulsion between the two masses. The two masses always attracts each other. That is what we call Newton's law of gravitation. But how do we find out the magnitude of the force? The magnitude of force of attraction between the two masses is given by this equation. F equals to G m1 m2 divided by r squared. And I will explain each term in this equation. G is a universal gravitational constant. Its value is 6.674 times 10 to the 11 cubic meter per kilogram per second squared. So this is called universal gravitational constant. The reason we call this one as a universal gravitational constant is because its value is same everywhere in the universe. Its value does not depend upon the position, does not depend upon the mass. It's everywhere exactly the same. That's the reason we call as a universal gravitational constant. M1 is the mass of first object, M2 is the mass of the second object, and R is the distance between the center of masses of the two objects. It must be the distance between the center of mass. For example, if I have the two objects M1 and M2, we always measure the distance between the two objects from the center to the center here. Because this is a homogeneous regular surface, so it's easy to find out the center of masses. But if you have very irregular surface, for example these two, then you always measure the distance between the center of masses. All right. So this is the equation. We talk about the each term here. So now let's talk about the direction. Because a force is a vector quantity, you must need to know what is the direction of the force. As I mentioned, the force, the gravitational force between the two objects is always attractive. What does this mean? That means this object attracts this object. So here is the force. And now if I look at the force on the second object, then the force would be this way, because there is attraction between these two. All right. So this object attracts the object in this direction, and this object attracts the second object in this direction. And one more thing, the force is always along the line joining the center of masses. That means the force direction cannot be in this way. The force must be, if I join the center of mass or the center of these two objects, then the force must be along this direction, must be along this line here. Okay, because this object, the first object attracts the second object, that's the direction. The second object attracts the first object, that is the direction of the force here. Okay, and the one important thing, now let's say you have very heavy objects here, and then you have another tiny objects. There is a force of attraction between these two objects too. And remember, the force, these two objects attracts each other exactly by the same amount of force. For example, if this first object attracts the second object by 100 Newton force, then the second object also attracts the first object exactly by the same force of 100 Newton. So the two objects always attract each other exactly with the same amount of force. The acceleration could be different, but the magnitude of force would be exactly the same. All right. So another term I would like to define here. So F12 versus F21. What is it? So as I mentioned again before, that these two objects attracts each other. So in order to distinguish the forces, so I have defined F12 and F21. What is the F12 means? That means a force on object first due to the object second. And this F21 means the force on object second due to the object first. And these two forces always equal in magnitude and opposite in direction. Remember, these two forces have exactly the same magnitude and opposite in direction. For example, the force on object first due to the object second is in this direction here. And the force on the second object due to the first object is along this direction. So you can see the force is in opposite direction, but the magnitude is always the same. So I hope you have understood the Newton's law of gravitation basic concept. If you have any question, write to me, and do not forget to like, subscribe and share the channel. Thank you very much.